ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चकितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयंभूपकदामह्यं ददाति स्वपदार्थं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदकमलं गुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणं रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् सारवेदं सारवेदं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादं सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमामि कृष्णपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिने नमः। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशताय नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदाय कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्यनामिने गौरकिशे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्तनमस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी शिराधि वृन्दावनेश्वरि वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरि नीलाचलनिवासाय नित्याय परमात्मने बलभद्रसुभद्राभ्यां श्रीजगन्नाथाय ते नमः। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुश्रीश कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्कायते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरम्। Hare Krishna. So we were reading from the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We were discussing sixth canto, first chapter, and I believe till now we have read up to text 19. And today we will begin with text 20 onwards. अत्र चोदहरन्ति माम् इतिहासं पुरातनम् दूतानां विष्णु यमयो संवादस्तं निबोध मे। In this regard, learned scholars and saintly persons describe a very old historical incident involving a discussion between the order carriers of Lord Vishnu and those of Yamaraj. Please hear of this from me, Bhagat. The Puranas or old histories are sometimes neglected by unintelligent men who consider their descriptions mythological. Actually, the descriptions of the Puranas or the old histories of the universe are factual, although not chronological. The Puranas record the chief incidents that have occurred over many millions of years, not only on this planet, but also on other planets within the universe. Therefore, All learned and realized Vedic scholars speak with references to the incidents in the Puranas. Srila Rupa Goswami accepts the Puranas to be as important as the Vedas themselves. Therefore, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he quotes the following verse from the Brahma Yamada. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhimbina Aikantiki Harir Bhakti Utpatayaiva Kalpate. Devotion service of the Lord that illumines the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, the Puranas, and Narad Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in a society. A devotee of Krishna must refer not only to the Vedas but also to the Puranas. One should not foolishly consider the Puranas mythological. If they were mythological, Sukadeva Goswami would not have taken the trouble to recite the old historical incidents concerning the life of Ajamila. Now the history begins as follows. Srila Prabhupada here very beautifully explains the importance of Puranas, which Srila Prabhupada is highlighting on. Srila Prabhupada is quoting Rupa Goswami, and Srila Rupa Goswami is citing from Brahma Yamala. That Shruti Smriti Purana the Pancharatra Vidhyam. This is the foundation, and without that, any endeavors or attempts towards devotional service, they only produce utpata eva kalpate. So, we have to understand that Shruti Smriti Purana, why the acharyas are emphasizing the Puranas is an important aspect to understand. No doubt Puranas are history, and Prabhupada makes this point very clear. Puranas are not mythology, they are not fairy tales. They are not children's bedtime fairy tale stories, they're histories. History of millions of years, history over millions of years of history. That's what these Puranas are. And the point is not just history over millions of years. They are some of the most celebrated events which have happened in the entire cosmic manifestation over millions of years. And therefore, it is not put because the time scale is so large, millions of years, it is not put in a chronological order. This chronological order we can only put when we are talking of okay, somebody's lifetime achievements and every decade what that personality did. That makes sense. But when we are talking about a time scale of millions of years, the chronology doesn't make any sense. Another reason why chronology doesn't make much sense is because if we see the life cycle of this universe is cyclic. The life cycle of this universe is a particular personality in the body, in a one particular body. For such a person, one can talk about chronology because body begins at some point of time, body dies at some point of time. So one can give a chronology. But if you're talking about again from the level of body, we rise to the level of the soul, again chronology fails. Why? Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityum dhruvam mritasya vyanasya. One who is born is sure to die, one who dies is sure to be born again. Finished. It's a cyclic now. The person will degrade to lower life forms again and again, get a human body. What chronology will discover? So this is the point. So the universe is created, the universe is destroyed. That's what we can see. The universe is created, universe is destroyed. So that's why the chronology doesn't make much sense. And that is why the Puranas very rightly do not include the chronology, but they are including the most important events so that we can learn from that. The highest principles, the topmost principle, or you can say the most efficient principles. No doubt, the Shastras are giving us of the most fulfilling lifestyle. Or if we are talking about, or if we say we talk about liberation or emancipation, then we see that okay, the Shastras give us weapons with which we can fight against the entanglement of Maya, the most lethal weapons used in the history of the cosmic manifestation are displayed in Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, in the Puranas. That is the whole point in general. So, this is why it is not mythology. There are some of the topmost principles which, if we apply, the entire existence of material world will be finished. That which has not happened millions of lifetimes can happen within one lifetime. That is the power of these principles, especially those which are manifested in Srimad Bhagavatam, especially principles in Bhagavatam, because Bhagavatam is geared towards emancipation. Bhagavatam is not just no, is not one of the Puranas in the moods. Bhagavatam is Amal Puran. It takes one beyond the modes. It is not a sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic plane. The Bhagavatam is beyond. It takes one beyond the modes. Dharma projita gaitavotra parama nirmatsaranam sitam. So, therefore, Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing or echoing the emphasis of the Acharyas, specifically Koti Rupa Goswami here, on the emphasis of the importance of the Puranas. But why? There is another reason why the Puranas are very important also. Is the other reason is that our entire parampara, process of devotional service, is about following in the footsteps of the Acharyas. And that is what we can get in the Puranas, and especially that is what we can get in Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is why it is all the more important for us. And that is why it is being emphasized very nicely. Let's read further. Text 21. Kani Pukshit Vijaya Kashit Dasi Pati Ajamila Namna Nashta Sadacharo Dasya Samsarga Doshitaha. In the city known as Kanyakuksha, there was a Brahmana named Ajamila who married a prostitute maid servant and lost all his Brahmanical qualities because of the association of that low-class woman. But the fault of illicit connection with woman is that it makes one lose all the Brahmanical qualities. In India, there is still a class of servants called Shudras, whose maid servant wives are called Shudranis. Sometimes people who are very lusty establish relationships with such maid servants and sweeping women Since in the higher statuses of society, they cannot indulge in the habit of woman hunting, which is strictly prohibited by social convention. Ajamila, a qualified Brahmin youth, lost all his grammatical qualities because of his association with the prostitute. But he was ultimately saved because he had begun the process of Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, in the previous verse, Sukadev Goswami spoke of the person who has only once surrendered himself to the lotus feet of the Lord. Mana Krishna Pada, or has just begun the Bhakti Yoga process. Bhakti Yoga begins with Shavanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing and of Lord Vishnu's names, as in the Mahamantra Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Chanting is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declares, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nameva Kevalam, Kalo Nasti Eva Nasti Eva Nasti Eva Gati Anyatha. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. The process of chanting the holy name of the Lord is always superbly effective, and it is especially effective in this age of Kali. Its practical effectiveness will now be explained by Sukadeva Goswami through the history of Ajamila, who was free from the hands of the Yamadutas simply because of chanting the holy name of Narayana. Parikshit Maharaj's original question was how to be freed from falling down into hell or into the hands of Buddhists. In reply, Sukadeva Goswami is citing this old historical example to convince Parikshit Maharaj of the potency of Bhakti Yoga, which begins simply with the chanting of the Lord's name. All the great authorities of Bhakti Yoga recommend the devotional service, beginning with the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Tannama Grihanadihi. We can understand that the modern day society is actually taking mankind on a very, very dangerous trajectory of ruination. Here in this incident of Ajamila Upakhyan, we can see that we can see that meddling, this man-woman meddling, leading to illicit relationships, is one of the uh, is one of the most degrading is one of the most degrading activities, or is one of the most degrading paths which can lead one to complete ruination. We saw that happening in this life of Ajamila. Spiritual life is all about controlling our mind and senses. Therefore, it is not enough to say that what to do. Our mind and senses go beyond the control. It's not enough to say that the entire process of Bhakti Yoga is about controlling the mind and the senses. And one of the most formidable enemies of controlling the mind and senses is this man-woman attraction. One may say, what's wrong? Everything is wrong in it. What is not wrong? That is the point. Because at the first place, this man-woman attraction, what it leads to is Destruction of Brahmanical qualities is the first thing which it leads to. Ajamila was a devotee. He was born in a devotee family. He had a very nice Brahmanical training. He had a very good training of culture. Despite of all that, the Ajamila, despite of all that, he degraded to such a level. So we hear in Ajamila Upakyan, he cast away his own chaste Brahmanical wife, he cast away, threw away his parents, then he brought this prostitute to his home. And then what happened? To fulfill the demands of this lady, he was a prostitute. He took to all kinds of, so he was stealing, he was robbing, he was exploiting, he was murdering people. Ajamila, a devotee Brahmana. Can one imagine somebody to be like that? Practically, he spent the whole life. At 80 or 88, 88 I think, was his last son, whom by mistake he named as Narayan. So that means from 2025 or wherever he got lost, till 2025 he practiced. After that, I mean, Vedic culture, you could marry a bit early, so I think he may be less than 25. So from there, 2020, 22, 24 to 88, 60, 64 years of demoniac life, looting, stealing. Do you think he was taking prasad during that time? Impossible, is it not? Right? What a life! One cannot even dream. To what level he got degraded. Now, Bhagavatam is explaining this pastime to show that this man-woman relationship is very, very degrading. Either one should not touch it, or one should touch it, ensuring 10 times dharmic principles. Being very careful. Yes, it's very, very degrading. But the first effect, as is being explained here by Srila Prabhupada, it destroys all Brahmanical qualities. That is what Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 towards the end, 36 to 42. That is, lust is so powerful. Jnana, Vijnana, Nashanam. Knowledge, realization, everything will be wiped off by the sway of this lust.
Okay, as practicing sadhaka, we might think that if we are following the four regular principles, or we are beginning just one or two kids, and so we are not in the situation of a dhamma. But the more severe problem with us is not the lust, not just the external amount of lust, but to accumulate more, atyahar is also lust. So we are all the time hearing allowance past like, okay, 88 is getting 12. But what if a man is, or woman, or anybody who is a practicing sadhaka, is wasting all his time and energy in making worldly empire? The person will be in it, and the person will be, all right, I'm initiated, I'm following four regular principles, I have 3 kids, I'm giving donation to the temple. I'm not like a Java. So how to understand that is that this other path is a sure path to go back to God in one lifetime? Because in that also, externally it might seem okay, I'm not like a Brahmin, but I'm attached to that one child more than the 10 or 12 category I'm having. I'm attached to money. So for us, the prostitute is not the way other people. For us, the prostitute is puja, pratishtha, and dhana, accumulation of assets, dravya asakti is the prostitute in our life. How to understand that this dravya asakti will take us away from Krishna and and we are comfortable, we are thinking, oh, we got the immunity, हमारा reservation हो गया है गोलोक का, हमारा दीक्षा हो गया, हम 4 भी होंगे, हमारे 16 वाले कर लेते हैं, हमारा गोलोक का फ्लाइट रिजर्व हो गया. What the life our sannyasis are living and what life we are living, result cannot be the same. And then we will say that we are caught up in certain circumstances. That's why we are doing this. But those circumstances are not given to us by Krishna. Those circumstances are the circumstances of our own mind acting like a prostitute, keeping us divert from the proper. So how to safeguard ourselves from our mind who behaves like a prostitute? And this prostitute is very clever. Because it makes us feel like what is only. But and we want Maharajas to come in our life and keep giving blessings. But if we check their life, how tight steady even externally it is so visible, how much they are struggling for Prabhupada. So how can we think that without studying for Prabhupada and secretly maintaining this mind as the prostitute in our life, how can we know that God is one lifetime? Can you put some light on this? Otherwise, how will make people, how will them make it? How will we get people this is Samsara? Don't damage, don't administrated, I'm following like a principle. It's not Dhavanala. Everybody cannot have the same gati. The proper disciples are all very different from us. Because their surrender to Prabhupada is way different from the way the present generation responds. Of course, we have dedicated examples in the present generation also, but not as many as required. So how to give up this complacency and this mind, how to make our mind change to the mission of Prabhupada. Prostitute is very clever. She's Ajahn thought, bring her, marry her. And it's okay, it's all dharmic. So all asakti, dravya asakti, all the worldly gain, name, fame, polish of Krishna consciousness over that. And I think we are also dedicating ourselves. Can we just elaborate on that?
The Acharyas elaborate on this. The Atyahara Dravya Asakti, Acharyas elaborate on this. Every teaching of the Acharyas, every prayer of the Acharyas is speaking that one should not waste one's life running behind economic development, running behind sense gratification. Name an Acharya, name a prayer. There is no question of going back to Godhead with maintaining attachments towards money and sense gratification. One will simply be lurking around in this material world for lifetimes. There is no question. Every Acharya's prayers. Look at Prahlad Maharaj prayers, second or the third prayer in his teachings to his schoolmates. He's speaking about don't waste your life running behind sense gratification. Economic development is madness, nonsense. What is his mad chase after this economic development? He's speaking to 5-year-old children with that urgency. This is the second or third prayer he started speaking like that. Every Acharya is speaking about that. We cannot make a cozy way back to Godhead. There is no cozy way back to Godhead. 16 rounds and 4 regulative principles is just to give us some basic common sense that we can evaluate what is right, what is wrong. But unless we cling on to the right, there's no question of going back to Godhead. Okay, Najamil Upakyan, the emphasis is on lust. The emphasis is on lust and man-woman relationship. But that doesn't mean that other things are all right. Because other places in the Bhagavatam, it talks about, Avanti Brahmana talks about 21 problems with money, with the chase for money. We can earn money, but we have to understand that the money doesn't belong to us. Then we can be saved. We earn money and think that it belongs to us, that money will degrade us. All the 21 effects. We can paste it in our drawing room in our homes later. All the 21 effects will act on us. Each and every one of them. And one can take an inventory every year and see how one is getting entangled. If we claim the money which we earn to be our own and use it for our own purpose, all those 21 effects will act, mind it. All those 21 effects, every single paisa we use for our own sense gratification, those 21 effects will act through that paisa. Going back to Godhead is about surrendering everything to Krishna.
Saying the problem with devotees are they get proud of their sattva guna. So by following 16 rounds and so regulated principle, they are just coming with modest goodness.
Yes, Sattva has the potency to keep one entangled. That is why it is one of the modes in this material nature. Sattva has a tendency of giving a sense of knowledge and sense of happiness, which means a full sense of complacency. And a person may get locked there for lifetimes. But Sattva has another quality. Very soon it is going to take one into Rajas and Tamas. Sattva can never remain Sattva forever because it is Sattva. Only Shuddha Sattva can remain without gliding down into Rajas and Tamas. So therefore, Krishna consciousness is about offering back everything to Krishna. Nothing belongs to us. Nothing belongs to us. So attachment to wealth is as dangerous as attachment to woman. And one leads to the other. That is the point. One leads to the other.
Just continue to this pharmacy and giving donations.
One leads to the other. Yes.
That time, that way we take this initiation from Guru Maharaj, continue pharmacy business, and keep giving donations to ISKCON. Only ISKCON will not happen there. And then same way, those Bhakti Swami Maharaj, Guru Maharaj, Giriraj Swami Maharaj, they could have continued with their professional goals and money making business and keep giving donation to ISKCON, but who is on the better position?
So, the path back to Godhead is only one. There are no multiple paths back to God. One cannot just chant 16 rounds and follow 4 regulated principles and think that one will go back to God. 16 rounds and 4 regulated principles is just the warm-up. If a sportsman does some warm-up exercise and then goes to sleep, what score he will make? That warm-up was there so that one can play nicely. Play means one can play nicely. And if there is no play, no struggle, nothing, where is the question of advancement? Where is the question of any score? A sportsman just does the warm-up, just does some warm-up exercises, goes back and sleeps. Similarly, as devotees, we just chant 16 rounds, regulated principles and do all nonsense in the world. Where is the question of advancement? That 16 rounds and 4 regulated principles is there so that we can do something. What we are supposed to do? Offer everything we have to Krishna. We are carrier of Lord Chaitanya Dev's mercy. Demonstrate live example of Sharanagati to the Supreme Lord. That's what we are supposed to do. Whatever figment of mental energy comes our way, whatever situation comes our way, we take shelter of the Lord, offering everything to Krishna. Not that we give, not that if we just give 16 hours and 4 rays, then everything else is there for us to enjoy. No, no, no. That is just a warm up, which can help us offer everything else to Krishna. So, in that spirit, we have to understand this. Otherwise, we will get lost, caught, and lost into this very dangerous trap. Lust, greed, anger, all of them give a trap. And therefore, all the acharyas are addressing it. So this is what keeps us hooked in this material world. We have to understand nothing is our possession. Everything belongs to Krishna. The more we think is our possession, the less will we ever speak to Krishna. The less we think is our possession, the more is our speak to Krishna. So that's the point. So one has to be very careful, and one will lead to the other. Because fall down, degradation, is all happens on all fronts. Happens on all fronts, not just on one front. One front leads to the others. Therefore, we have to be cautious on all the fronts of devotional service. Devotional service is about samarpan, sharanagati.
Calling is great, sir. Give me here, sir.
Yes.
Especially proper asking. Yes. And yes, that person only.
Yes. Very truthful.
I think that's why the people who come from a more poppy background, they are more repentant souls. And when they're more repentant souls, their struggle, their surrender is like ultimate. Because that potential is so much, there is so much gratitude in the heart that Prabhupada has saved our life. So my life belongs to Prabhupada. And not for Papi and who lies like that. It's just matter like how much gratitude we are getting for Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada is right that no offering. I'm sold out, I am not doing. Otherwise, Diksha will become like an official thing. Well, the same. And okay, one year bring that IDC certificate, and एक साल के बाद आके बोला हमको दीक्षा दे दो. Okay, आप गलत जाने के लिए थोड़ी ना हो गया.
Yeah. Diksha process is the beginning of spiritual life. Spiritual life is more difficult than cracking Nobel Prize also.
My scientist now quite
How your work is looking forward to, how you should, and how you should think. How we should manage? How we should think. Srila Prabhupada and proper disciples have led the way. Whatever we can earn, working 8 hours a day, we can work from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Morning we should do morning program, evening we should do evening program, either preaching or attending or temple services. Daytime we can earn whatever we earn, we should give it to the temple. That is the ideal standard which is set by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada disciples will lift up to that standard. And whatever we need for our clothes, eating, we'll get from the temple. That is the ideal standard which is set. Okay, we can earn. Every single penny should be submitted to the temple. That standard is very clear. That standard is very clear. There is no discrepancy in that. Okay, one cannot do this, then fine. If one cannot do that, then fine. At least do something. That is the point which comes. But what is the ideal standard? Ideal standard is yes, one can work 8 hours for the body, earn whatever one wants, one gives it to the temple, and then whatever one needs for one's clothing, fooding, one can take from the temple. It doesn't matter whether one is brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi. For everyone, the same code is there. This is what everybody used to do. This is what Gopal Krishna Maharaj would do. This is what Brahmananda Prabhu would do. This is what everybody would do. Whatever they would earn, they would bring it to the temple. And for their needs, whatever they would need, they would take from the temple. This is what everybody would do.
और अच्छा टाइम लगेगा हम उसके घर में मजा करेंगे भगवान नहीं कर हम शिष्य कैसे हो सकते हैं how can we go that disciples being a disciple is also like that process गुरु दिन रात हेल्थ में स्ट्रगल है कितना मुझे दिन रात गुरु सबसे दिन स्ट्रगल कर रहे हैं और हम गोदी लेके थे तो शिष्य को तो गुरु से ज्यादा संघर्ष करना
Yes.
Like we should do Brahmachari bhakti, like a change like the husband. So she was asking Krishna the palace not for herself. Because she was thinking, मेरे पति को मुझे खाने को देने के लिए कुछ नहीं है ये भगवान का इतना अच्छा भक्त है तो इस तरह से यही होता था कि शिष्य जो सब इकट्ठा करके लाते थे गुरु जी को देते थे और गुरु जी के पूछे अगर गुरु पूछना भूल जाए तो भूखे रह जाते थे
Yes, so see the principle of Shastras is very clear, and the more we come to following it, the more it will benefit us. The more we dilute it, the more we will remain bound and entangled, even by practicing Krishna consciousness. Because you cannot lit fire and put water at the same time. If you lit fire and put water, it is water, it is not fire. If it is fire and no water, that fire can burn everything. Everything. Entire material existence. But fire and water means water. 16 rounds and sense gratification means sense gratification. Does not mean 16 rounds. Finished. Only it will ensure one to get sense gratification next life in the heavenly. Nothing else. One is just going 100 miles up, 100 miles up from here is Swargaloka, and that is where one will land.
स्वर्ग is not so easy. स्वर्ग में जाने के लिए डुप्लीसिटी नहीं होनी चाहिए हार्ट में इतने सारे क्राइटेरिया हमको लगता है हम एक्सटर्नली 16 महीने कर देते हैं 4 महीने में बात होते हैं हम 2 लोग जा रहे हैं जो इतना छलकपट हमारे हृदय में विद्या विनिवेश भरा हुआ है हम स्वर्ग में भी नहीं जा सकते एक पुणे का लेक्चर है महाराज का हमको लगता है दुनिया that is the we are living in a religion.
What should one do for family needs? It might need larger money than food, clothing. So how to manage for that? Can that also be taken from the temple? Yeah. So, so the point is the basic necessities can be taken by the temple, but we have to be honest with ourselves that it is a basic necessity. Food, clothing, uh, food, clothing, health pretty much summarizes everything. Uh, One has to be very careful. Like Radheshyam Prabhu was explaining, many times many devotees are leading temple projects in ISKCON. So in India, they take some 50,000 or something from the temple. Temple presidents. Some, not every temple president takes 50,000 rupees. Some temple presidents, they're serving wholeheartedly day and night. They take 50,000 from the temple for their maintenance. I was talking to His Grace Pyari Mohan Prabhu some month or so back. And I was explaining in India, that is what they do. This is called as full-time life in India. Prabhuji, I was explaining to him, this is what Rai Shampoo told us, this full-time life. It takes some 50,000. Serve temple wholeheartedly, raise a whole community, raise the temple, raise funds, increase the preaching, serve the deities, so on. And Prabhu was asking, okay, uh, how much it is in dollars? Uh, I told him 50,000 means somewhere around $650 or something. Somewhere around $650 a month. His answer was, this is too much. Uh, this is coming straight from the mouth of a proper disciple. He said, this is too much, taking from the temple. So, yeah.
अपने बच्चे को होम स्कूलिंग किया उनका बेटा इतनी अच्छी यूनिवर्सिटी में
Yeah. Pyari Mohan, who is Grahastha, he and his good wife he had been running Boston Temple for many decades and Hartford Temple for many decades, and had been RPC, GBC. Now he's presently focused just on Connecticut. Connecticut is a state based on Hartford. So, had been a Grahastha, had two children. So he said, this is too much. That way. That means, so our Muktavinda Prabhu was telling, they used to do flower business for the temple. They were grahasthas. They used to do flower business for the temple. In their flower setup or flower outlet, flower industry, the temple had opened, for funds. The norm was that the devotees would do, so they would earn around $8 a day per person. Per day. Profit, $8 profit per person. Like that. So, and then he said those who were brahmacharis who were doing this seva, they would give all $8 to the temple. And he said those who were grihasthas, he put his head down. He was not speaking for a long time. He was like this, doing. And he was very embarrassed. He was very ashamed. He said, and those who grihasthas like me used to keep $4 for us and give $4 to the temple. So shame for that. So, so that's what he would say. So the point is that if the feeling is to give more and more to Krishna and take less and less for oneself, then we will protect it. But when this feeling goes off, so why Muktavinda Prabhu could lead a life of that dedication of 5 decades, came in 1970, 71. Muktavinda Prabhu and Niranjan Maharaj the same batch, same college, same batch, same time. So both same college, same batch, same time. UMass Amherst. So the point is therefore that yes, for our basic needs we can take from the temple, but one should be careful oneself and evaluate how much one is taking. Then one will be protected. See, this is Krishna consciousness. That way. So,
and they are proper disciples, but when it was the time for their sons to and sharing their, oh, we stayed in the hotel last night at this one, probably the same. You were thinking they asked us what we will tell. We parked our car in a garage, we slept in the car. Well, Prabhupada disciples and temple proceedings. We slept in the car, morning we paid some $4 or $5 to take a shower there, and we got to give for our son's college admission. See, they can misutilize family money. They can claim that how can you think that our destination and their destination will be the same?
yeah, so the whole point is the principle is very clear actually. When we see, we think it is a farce. Many times in India, we think it is a farce. Sometimes people think even giving 50% donation to the temple is oh very lofty, only Rupa Goswami did it. No, that 50% is not the norm. 100% is the norm. 50% is not the norm at all. Who said 50% is the norm? Okay, one doesn't want to give anything to Krishna. Okay, even if 5 rupees one gives, one will get some credit. But that credit is not the credit enough to go back to Godhead. That credit is some Sukriti credit. That's all. But what price we want to pay for those who want to go back to Godhead and end material existence is to offer everything to Krishna. That is the price. That is the point. And the more we do a barter and bargain with Krishna, the more we are entangling ourselves. That is the whole point. So that is why we have to be very careful. And it is not that it is not practical. Sometimes people say, oh, this is not practical. It is 100% practical. It is in Prabhupada times. Why this movement is going on? Because in Prabhupada times, we see most of the Prabhupada disciples lived by this principle. They used to feel staying outside the temple has gone in Maya. That was
Shikhi Mahidi Prabhu was telling, he was chanting 16 hours, calling for like the principal, but he was staying outside. I think those days, it was like if you're staying outside, so you have to do it.
Yeah, proper times that was the norm. That if you're staying outside the temple, then you are in Maya. What to say of working outside? Staying outside the temple, one is in Maya. That was the norm. So whether one is married or not married, men would stay in Brahmachari ashram, Matajis would stay in Brahmachari ashram. Doesn't matter whether one is married or unmarried. So principles of Brahmachari, Grihastha, Sannyasi, Vanaprastha are the same. There is only one principle. All these are man-made nomenclatures. There is no separate principle for a Grihastha. There is no separate principle for a Vanaprastha. Principle is the same. Principle is the same actually. So yes, if one wants to go back to Godhead, it requires that kind of vigor. Prophet times, that was the norm. Most of the prophet disciples lived by this principle. Most of them lived by this principle. When the temple needed money, they did business. They were doing, they were working also. But everything, Satswarup Maharaj was also working. Satswarup Maharaj was a grahastha. He was also working. With his earnings, he was running the temple. For so many years, he ran the temple with his earnings. So he ran the temple. That is not one, two, no, strange, rare examples. Each and every proper disciple we count, most of them were following this principle. Anyone we are seeing, anyone we are getting to know about them, they were following this principle. Nobody was following 50% donation, also principle. Everyone was following 100% donation to Krishna principle. Whether it is Gopal Krishna Maharaj, whether it was Brahmananda Prabhu, whether it was Satswarup Maharaj, whether it was Pyari Mohan Prabhu.
They are not having the Rajyoga craze in their house.
So that is the point actually. So we have to understand. I mean, that is the price we have to pay for going back to Godhead. Whether we want to go or not, that's our choice. But if we want to go, the price is clear. There is no discrepancy on the price. It's not that we can do anything in the name of, under the banner of Krishna consciousness and go back to Godhead. It's not possible.
Everything we are going to give us Ghana, give us this.
Going back to Godhead, one may be most likely stuck up here itself or in other tracts of Bharatvarsha. Bharatvarsha has 8 other tracts. I mean, there are 8 other versions other than Bharatvarsha. So one may be lost into that. And you have 1000 years lifestyle there, and heavenly bodies there, and that kind of thing. Or one may land up in heavenly planets. So
Srila Prabhupada went to Yatra with his Guru Maharaj. He was not clicking photos with Guru Maharaj and keeping his home saying, my Guru Maharaj gave me a garland. He picked up the anxiety of his spiritual master. That's why he's a bona fide disciple. So we have made Guru also very big. And I just want to say one more thing. Like, most surprising is that so easily to put a question mark in our scanner lens on proper disciples to check whether they are pure devotees or not. And we are doing so much other things in our life, and we are thinking we are pure enough to go back to God and this same thing. Wow, for us, our standards are so diluted. And for proper disciples, they have given everything, still we doubt them.
that is why we see that, okay, by Krishna's mercy, the more and more we are getting association of Srila Prabhupada disciples, the more we are getting to know about their lives. We are understanding this is the truth. How much dedicated they have been. What to speak of giving 5%, 10% donations? Sometimes we beg our passouts to at least give 10% of your income. They are earning 4 lakh, they are giving 1000 rupees. Because 20 years back, 15 years back, when they passed out, they started giving 1000. Somebody started giving 3000, it is still 3000. Past 15 years have passed. And the salary might have gone 20 times. Not like that. 10%, 20% we are making. The standard to go back to Varid is different for us. And it's not impractical, it's not theoretical. Perhaps each and every one of them have led that kind of a life. You go and see them, you go and meet them, they're still alive on the planet. Each and every one of them. But that is why, to know the secrets of Krishna consciousness, the first principle which is required is availability. Are we available to watch and learn? If we are, we can learn so many things. Only through Muktavinda Prabhu we are getting to know about the sacrifices of Satswarup Maharaj. Muktavinda Prabhu only connected us to Pyari Mohan Prabhu and Jivan Ashwati Mataji. So we are getting to know only when we are available to learn from Srila Prabhupada disciples, then we can understand. One Mataji, one led a very dedicated life.
So the public conversation was so particular. It is possible last week उनको वेस्ट नहीं करना था क्योंकि वो प्रॉपर के टाइम से सीखा हुआ है हाँ ये सो पक्का कि उस पानी के ऊपर से रख लिया कि इसको क्या फेंकना तो प्रॉपर आएगा फेस्टिवल में हम देख रहे थे ना कि सिल्वर ट्रेस में कुछ प्रसाद आया ऐसे मुझे सेलिंग में करना नहीं ये रील हो जाता है हाँ प्यारे हम लोग ने मैंने पिछले काट काट के बचा बचा के यूज कर रहे होते हैं हाँ लकड़ी काटते हैं शादी के लिए खुद से कितना कुछ है ना एंड फॉर द नेक्स्ट जनरेशन माधव रामहरि प्रभु दिया ना टैप वाला मेंटेनेंस हमको कभी घर में नहीं बनाया पूरी जिंदगी में
Yes.
एक बच्चा पल गया चेतन
So this is the point actually. We saw Periman was cutting wood. What is the need of cutting wood?
and there is 73
77.
Three.
77 Prabhu said.
77
77 he said. I heard 77.
I'll check it
Because Prabhu said that Prabhu said 77. As far as I heard. Because Prabhu said when you show this photograph, you can tell also my age. I am 77. For what he is cutting wood? He is cutting wood so that at low cost he can make arrangements for the winters, minus 20 degrees centigrade. He could have put AC. There are room heater ACs actually. In Boston Temple it is there. Can Parry Mohan not put it? With GBC.
I see not really done.
For himself, he wants to save that money also for Prabhupada. And just use wood. So this is there is dedication in each and every one of their activities. Actually, proper disciples are that is why this movement is going on. This movement. He's 77. He told me 77. I heard 77. These are proper disciples actually. So what foolishness it is to simply give arguments that no, this is not practical. We have to be practical. We have to first think of our own lives and this and that. Not a single proper disciple thought like this. What practicality we're talking about. That is why the movement is going on till date. Prabhupada is living. Where is he living? In the hearts of his disciples. Prabhupada is living in the hearts of his disciples. This movement will not go on with the mass of people who think that they just take initiation and they can do any damn nonsense thing in this world. This movement can only go on through those who dedicate everything to Srila Prabhupada. The movement is going on because proper disciples have led this kind of dedication. But who is wanting to hear about their lives? Are we even taking the time to hear about their lives, to hear about the dedication, to hear about the surrender? We don't understand. We have no understanding of how spiritual things work. And can we pass the exam of death? With no preparation, with no understanding of the mechanics, the principles, the laws, which take one anti-gravity to the modes. It's a science. It's a science. There are principles, there are laws, how one can go anti-gravity to the modes. And if we don't learn the science of how to go anti-gravity to the modes, can we think that we can pass this exam of death? We cannot. We cannot. So therefore, Therefore, one of our very ardent desires is to spend more and more time serving Srila Prabhupada disciples now while they are on this planet, because there is no question of understanding even a droplet of bhakti without learning and seeing their life examples. There is no question. All kind of weird algorithms one can go on making. All kind of weird, absurd algorithms one goes on making. All kind of weird absurdness one keeps doing in the name of Krishna consciousness, and one thinks that we can pass the exam. Yes, anybody can pose himself to be a hero. Anybody can pose himself to be a hero. Like in KGB also, we see so many people keep walking around as if they are heroes. Only till the time incidents don't happen. Yeah, when the CGPA comes,
Oh,
yeah, that is the point. So one can pose oneself as a big star, but the Yamaraj is going to ask CGP, okay, what did you perform in the exam? What did you write in the exam? That is the point. So therefore, we have to understand that the science back to Godhead is demonstrated by uh, the dedicated devotees, and we have been extremely fortunate. See, in one sense, had we only been at proper times, we could have seen the dedication of Srila Prabhupada. But we are there, one generation down, we can see the dedication of so many Prabhupada disciples. So many Prabhupada disciples. So in that way, it's not that we are having dearth of opportunity. It's not that we are having dearth of opportunity. But are we willing to see the life and example of Prabhupada disciples? That is the point. And to understand and follow in their footsteps. Many proper disciples, they're 75, 77, they work 15 hours a day. Do any of us would dare to do service 15 hours a day? Adi Purush Prabhu had come. 15 hours a day he works. 15 hours a day for Prabhupada. He's running a guest house. He's preaching through the guest house, distributing Prabhupada books from the earnings of the guest house. He is doing the Food for Life. Prabhupada emphasized on these three programs: Sankirtan, book distribution, and Food for Life. Prasadam, Food for Life. And Prabhuji is in that way trying to arrange for incomes of many devotees that they can raise their families and serve within ISKCON and continue bhakti. So he is doing many such services on these fronts. Very dedicated, 15 hours a day he works. Can you imagine? Very powerful. He is also 76, 77. I mean, the youngest of proper disciples would be 72 or something.
I think that Dheera Prabhu will say more because but he also he said 65 or 70 Dheera Prabhu.
No, 71, 72 will be the last stage of the proper disciples. The youngest of
Vishnu
them.
Dada Prabhu.
That means they got initiation in 1977 and they were around 12 years, 14 years at that age.
Not 12 years, 14, 18 years.
Something like that.
18 years. Like Vishnu
Some of them may be like there is one Prabhuji. There is one Prabhu who was 12 years in 1975, 76. Melbourne. Prabha Prabhu or something.
Good Vishnu Maharaj gave initiation like Mother mentioned at young age. So it's very simple. I think I can say two more things for everybody. So, like the senior devotees encourage us that should not be seen as a certificate that, okay, what we are doing is the best. That they encourage so that we continue Krishna consciousness. What we think encouragement and certificate, but they are accommodating us so that we continue practicing bhakti. And how we see the life of senior devotees, they give out the service throughout life. They are not giving it up or taking retirement, they are doing it more and more and more. And after doing more and more and more, what are the final realizations? I could have served Prabhupada more.
Yes.
I have not served Prabhupada more.
Every proper disciple feels like this, that they have not sufficiently served Srila Prabhupada.
What they're telling us is just to encourage us so that we continue, but we should not think that this is a certificate for us to go back to Godhead. Because they are fully dedicated and they think, I could have served Srila Prabhupada more, I have not served him. That is their lamentation.
Yes. So the science of going back to Godhead is very, very clear. And that is why we say Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta. The presence of Dharma are not what five people come together and create the local acceptability and start following and say, okay, this is the norm, this is the practical standard, you know, which we have balanced it out and all that. Shri Jagannath Dev Subhadrama Shri Maharani Shri Mati Dharmasya Tattvam Nihita Guhayam Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta. The principles of Dharma are to be understood from great devotees. So I heard from Vaishnav Prabhu, okay, that okay, if somebody is running a full temple, then one can take 50,000 salary. But then I learned a higher learning from Pyarimal Prabhu. That is too much. So, even that is too much. Uh, so, uh,
Yeah, because
so I did a very nice, I mean, I had gone through a very nice exercise before I was marrying. I had asked my father, I told him that, okay, forget about who am I to you. Tell me honestly and earnestly how much money a family man needs to live. I said, forget about who am I, who are you. You just tell me honestly and earnestly from your experience. He said to live a decent life, considering all material factors and all that. Whatever my father, he was an atheist. I mean, he was not practicing Krishna consciousness. I mean, he had been an atheist. Now he's a well-wisher. I mean, not like that. He chants sometimes, but yeah, there's a well-wisher, you can say, like that. And he had no much. And that time he was less of a well-wisher also. Uh, so he evaluated everything. He said, okay, you are married, you want to have a family, you want to have just a decent, considering all these factors, basic minimum. He said you need 30,000 a month. 30,000 a month. That's all you need. I said, thank you. And he said, if you have one child, you need 40. If you have two child, plus 10 more. So every child plus 10. That's what he said. So I understood. So that matches somewhat with that 50,000 standard, you know, what Radhesham was saying. No, some of the temple, because you have two children and you're taking 50,000 from the temple, not like that. But you see the point. I got the shock of my life. Many ISKCON devotees and counselors, they were telling me that you need 1 lakh. You need one.
devotee को करने से भी ज़्यादा द्रव्य इकट्ठा करने लगे.
Yeah, many counselors, all that were telling me. And many of them were pitching to Acharya Prabhu, this fellow, nobody will marry him. You know? And I was okay for that because I had kept a time limit. And after that, that is why Acharya Prabhu had told, till the day when marriage is fixed, don't leave yourself alone. That is not allowed in general to anyone, but Acharya Prabhu allowed me. I mean, not just allowed me, he told me to do that. So I had to do that. So I had a deadline, and by that deadline, if I was clear that if I don't find anyone, no problem, I just continue like that because principles are principles. That's the point. So, so this is a shock. So, but then what happens is that many times we get deluded by these uh, uh, self-created dimensions of what spirituality is all about. You have to know what spirituality is all about. You have to learn from proper disciples. You cannot learn from here, there, anywhere, everywhere. This Prabhu is following, that Prabhu is following. No.
Mission management की जगह money management हो रहा है.
So therefore, we have to learn. We have to learn from the right source. Srila Prabhupada was the only source for proper disciples, and proper disciples should be the only source for us. We have to learn from proper disciples. Each and every devotee's life whom we are getting to know, we are getting amazed. It's the same fabric of dedication, complete dedication. There is no dilution. Each and every devotee's life we are getting to know. The same fabric of dedication what we are understanding. Okay, then let's read further.
Like now, as a senior citizen, okay, this Parikon student, University Mataji, start getting some and like when he was discussing about his life and he's telling that child admission and everything, that we were poor, it pains your heart hearing from them that they are saying we are poor. Like we were poor only, that's why वो truck के पास में $5 देके सान कर लिया अपने बच्चे का एडमिशन करा के आए. फिर बोले थे कि अभी हम बहुत अमीर हो गए. Very rich. उनको सीनियर सिटीजन में $1,200 मिलता है, तो वो $1,200 उनको ऐसा लग रहा है कि कितना बचा है. ठीक है, और यहाँ पे क्या है, $12,000 में भी लगता है मेरा कैसा गृहस्थी चलाऊं, मेरा अभी there was a query like this, मैरिड हुआ है कैसे मैनेज करूं, $12,000 में भी रो है.
Yeah. So if we base our life on money, we'll always keep crying. If we base our life on mercy, we will be happy in every situation. Let's read text 22. You have to read 22, right? Vandiyakshe kaitaves chaurye garhitam vritim astitaha Biprat kutumbam ashuchir yata yatayam asadehinaha This fallen Brahmana, Jamin, gave trouble to others by arresting them, by cheating them in gambling, by directly punishing them. This was the way he earned his livelihood and maintained his wife and children. Arresting, cheating, plundering. This verse indicates how degraded one becomes simply by indulging in sex life with a prostitute. Illicit sex is not possible with a chaste or aristocratic woman, but only with unchaste Shudras. The more society allows prostitution and illicit sex, the more impetus it gives to cheaters, thieves, plunderers, drunkards, and gamblers. Therefore, we first advise all disciples in our Krishna consciousness movement to avoid illicit sex, which is the beginning of all abominable life, and which is followed by meat eating, gambling, intoxication, one after another. Of course, restraint is very difficult, but it is quite possible if one fully surrenders to Krishna. Since all these abominable habits gradually become distasteful for a Krishna conscious person. If illicit sex is allowed to increase in a society, however, the entire society will be condemned, for it will be full of rogues, thieves, cheaters, and so forth. So Prabhupada is explaining, no doubt restraint is difficult, but it is possible if one fully surrenders to Krishna. Therefore, we see that simply casual trying out of the principles and precepts of Shastras is of no much use. Because the principles and precepts of Shastras will not be effective with casual tryout. That is why Shastra says Serve with surrender. Because when we serve with surrender, then it's not a casual tryout. It's Mahajano Yena Gata Sapantha. It is Mahajano Yena Gata Sapantha. So as Mahajanas, as the Acharyas, as the seniors, as the Guru Varga have done, like that I am going to do. So it's not a casual tryout. Oh, let me see what is this principle. Let me just like as if we are playing with a ping pong ball. Like this, like this, like this, like this, throwing here, throwing there. No, the principles of Shastras are not to be dealt like this. And then we say, hey, not working. Maybe not practical for me. We'll see it later. And so on. No, not like that. Mahajana Yanagata Sapanta. That's why surrender is said. So that is why we will see with Jumbo Mambo practice of Krishna consciousness, uh, sense and mind control is going to be very difficult task. It is not easy with Jumbo Mambo practice because restraint is not possible. How will one restrain? Artificial. Restraint is not possible. It is only possible with surrender, fully surrender. And that means what? Exactly following what the acharyas have done. Why they did what they did? Because that is the only way back to Godhead. That is why they did what they did. Because that is the only way back to Godhead. And if we have to go back to Godhead, or we want to go back to Godhead, then we have to follow that exact same pathway, step by step. Is it not? So therefore, you see, that is the only way back to Godhead. So Prabhupada is saying artificially things are not going to work. The process of Krishna consciousness doesn't work artificially. We say yes, the priti for Krishna is not coming, the surrender, the fire, the zeal is not coming. It doesn't come artificially simply by playing around. The problem is many times we keep playing around with the principles of Krishna consciousness like a ping pong ball. And that's all. We simply keep playing around. Okay, now let's visit Vrindavan. Now let's visit here. Now let's go to visit Gujarat. So sometimes one just keeps playing around. Krishna consciousness doesn't grow by that. It grows by commitment. It grows by dedication. And therefore, we need to follow the examples of the great souls actually. And therefore, one needs to know the heart of the great souls. One needs to know the lives of the great souls. And this process is 100% practical. So many proper disciples have followed it throughout their life and led a glorious example. So how could they follow it? They followed it because of their willingness to surrender and mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And similarly, our willingness to take shelter of them, and by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and all of his disciples, we will also be able to follow. Although it is anti-gravity, but still we will be able to follow. And that is the greatest magic that one can see. That all Maya's pulls and degrading pulls will remain as it is. And such a sincere follower can go anti-gravity straight back home, back to God. Phenomenal, is it not? Prabhupada demonstrated that a candidate engrossed in the deepest, the most degraded dungeon of material existence, New York City,
the most perverted, the most degraded dungeon of the world, you know, the most degraded capital of the world, New York City. From there also, somebody can get up and walk straight back home, back to paradise. This is the power of surrender. It's phenomenal. This process is very powerful. That's why I think Prabhupada chose New York. Because Radhanand Maharaj explains the most degraded place in the United States is New York. United States, the most degraded place in the world. Within the United States, New York City is the most degraded place. Next is San Francisco, because the second temple was opened there. Yeah. This is East Coast, that is West Coast. So you see the point. That is the point. And that is the point. Okay, let's read it. Huh? Yes.
See, even what's the Prabhupada? Even Jagannath is sacrificing so much for the sake of preaching Krishna. Just to give Krishna consciousness to the misdirected youth of this world. Jagannath is managing a simple prasadam. Early morning and late night shifts.
एवं निवसतस्तस्य लालयानस्य तत्सुतान् कालोत्यागान् महान् राजन् अस्तास्यत्यायुषा समः. My dear king, while he thus spent his time in abominable sinful activities to maintain his family of many sons, 88 years of his life passed by. Ajamal was saved later, definitely because of the causeless mercy of the Lord, but because his father and elders had given him a very solid spiritual training in the beginning years of his life.
Very solid. Not like that.
Still, it took more than 64 years for that training to come back in that fight. That is how strong mind is. The problem with us is we have no training. We have no battery backup. So what are we going to do? Is in our hands. Kantrashim Bhagavatam ki, Shiv Prabhupada ki,